Hi, I'm Greg Yulin with Reynolds & Reynolds, and this is Connected. I couldn't be more excited about today's episode. I get to sit down with Yossi Levi. Maybe some of you might know him better as Car Dealership Guy. I've been looking forward to having this conversation for a long time. So, Yossi, thanks so much for joining me.
Greg, thanks for having me on. Excited to finally make this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I want to jump in and I kind of want to dive right into, tell me about Car Dealership Guy, how you got there, and we can go all over the place. But I wanted to start. So I listened to a podcast, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I like to consume a lot of podcasts. Audio is kind of the channel that I gravitate towards. And so I remember hearing, and this was probably, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, year and a half ago, I listened to a podcast called My First Million. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, of
Sam
course.
Parr, so Sam Parr, founder of The Hustle, he brought up Car Dealership Guy, and it was like one of these episodes where they're talking about fun ideas or whatever, and one of them was creating an anonymous Twitter account and then building a business off of it, and he brought up Car Dealership Guy, and I was just like, what is he talking about? So I went and looked, and that was actually my first introduction to like understanding what you were doing or getting exposed to it. So tell me about, I'm assuming you probably heard that or saw that at some point or somebody sent it to you. So tell me about that moment, where it kind of fell in your development as you were building out this kind of persona and ultimately this business.
Yeah, well, Greg, that was an interesting time period because Car Dealership Guys started out as I like to say sort of an accident where I needed a way to just be creative online, or I was looking for a way to express my creativity. That was I was going through a bit of a tough time with my business, and for some reason, I gravitated towards creating an anonymous account on Twitter. Go figure. Who knows why? You mentioned Sam. So the brand pretty early on captured like the zeitgeist of just the consumer online for various reasons, right? Timing was one of them, which that was out of my control. That was sort of luck. But if you remember a couple years back, automotive price fluctuations, that was the biggest thing. Everyone was talking about it, right? Used car prices are record highs and, there's no new cars. So there was a lot of confusion in the market. And I never intended on, coming out and being this sort of insights, anonymous figure that just, kind of explains what's happening. But I started just having fun online. And I would say that through the first 150,000 followers, maybe even more, it was genuinely just me having fun online. And so it really all just started like that. Never thought that I'd be running a media company, let alone, one of the fastest growing automotive media companies today. We've grown astronomically, and I can talk about that shortly. But it's been a really fun journey, an opportunity for me to reinvent myself, and most importantly, an opportunity for me to sort of scratch my own itch, which is, when I was a dealer, being especially an independent dealer, not having, the franchise shingles or anything like that, I didn't have many resources for learning, development, just understanding what's happening, seeing best practices. And so knowing that today I have the privilege, and I say privilege because I really do believe it is a privilege, to have the ears and eyes of thousands upon thousands of dealers in the industry and other industry professionals listening, consuming this content. I take it very seriously and try to put, the best stuff out there and just, have a lot of fun along the way.
How does it feel different? I assume it feels different. Maybe I'm wrong. You'll tell me I'm full of it. But does it feel different? And if so, how? To be able to speak in an anonymous way versus with your face out there, your name out there? Because I imagine, internally, it's a different mindset, right? Being able to just throw it out and it's like, oh, this is what I believe. And then on the flip side, it's like, this is what I believe, but people know who I am and I gotta back it up now.
Early on, I would say it was more challenging when I knew that I had a business that was not this media thing to run, and I had investors, and I cared, right? I cared. I don't want to say something stupid that could jeopardize the company. Today, Car Dealership Guy has no institutional capital, no outside capital, period, actually. And, like my boss is our clients and our listeners. That's who my boss is, right? That's who I report to. And when you think of it that way, right, the people want authenticity, right? Like we like to call ourselves expert-led media because that is where the market no longer wants this legacy media that's scrubbed by, lots and lots of different people and bureaucracy. And you're getting some form of like propaganda or something from, some person made a decision. Like people just don't want that anymore. And social media has sort of just completely obliterated that world and opened it up for everyday dealers, vendors, just industry professionals to share their thoughts and what they see on the ground floor. And frankly, they're the practitioners. And so I would say it feels great. It feels great that I can go out there, be myself, be authentic. Sometimes I'm myself to a fault, just like completely. I don't like to fabricate it. I want people to know who I am. And I really believe that will, help me attract, my tribe and people that want to be part of this community. So it's a good feeling. There is a little bit of an adjustment curve where you get used to it, and it's a little uncomfortable. But now today, I would be lying to you if I even think twice before I tweet something or write it. Excuse me. Again, sometimes to a fault. Like I make mistakes, and I've apologized for mistakes, but.
Yossi, I'm curious to build off of that and thinking about that transition from, anonymous to known entity 12 months ago or 13 months ago, whatever it was. And I remember listening to, and I'm blanking on his name right now. You might know it, but there was a guy, he was under the name Strip Mall Guy. He was a investor in strip malls, basically. And he would tweet things out, and it was an anonymous account. And once he revealed himself, he talked about how it was really friends and family that he was nervous about. Like the rest of the world, all of his, 250,000 followers, didn't matter. It was really the people that knew him, that were close to him, that he thought about the most. Early on, was that the same thing for you? What did you have different, I guess, perceptions of how people would look at you based on who they were?
Yeah. So Strip Mall Guy is a good friend. And
okay.
So it's funny. Yeah. And I know him very well. And I was, we spoke a lot about that whole experience. What I would tell you is that it's, I don't think ever before the internet has there been a phenomenon where you could technically have this online relationship with thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, and they don't know who you are. And then one day they do. And it's like everything turns on a dime. It's very bizarre. I can tell you that when I went to NADA last year, I walked in, no one knew who I was. I walked out, it was like everyone knew who I was. You know what I mean? And I'm exaggerating, but you get the idea, a large percentage of people. And so it has just been, it's been very interesting. People, when people meet you, they really, they feel this sort of connection to you, because what you're doing all day, in a sense, is you're just delivering value to them, right? You're sharing insights, you're sharing news, you're sharing content. You're not charging them money for that. And so when people meet you, they're very excited. It's like, wow, I have listened to your voice for hours upon hours. I get to finally meet you. It's a very interesting thing. But I try to just remember that, I like to ask people, why do you listen? What do you most enjoy? When did you start listening? To really get into their heads and understand what is the value that they're deriving from the content. And so it's definitely been crazy. I can tell you this year at NADA, it was even crazier, because it's when you're creating content, as right? You create content, you are behind the screen. I do this, every week of the year, right? A couple times a week. I don't see the people. Yeah, I see the numbers, the views, the comments, the likes, but that's not real. It's not tangible. And suddenly you're going to a conference where it's all, dealers and industry vendors and stuff like that. And people at a very high rate know who you are and saying hello to you. It's sort of it's a mind trip. You're like, wait, it's like I'm here suddenly, everyone knows me. Suddenly you walk out, it's weird. But you know what? It's great. And net, it's just been a lot of fun being able to be this sort of unique voice for the industry.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit too about, so you mentioned being recognized by everybody, right? And it's your voice and it's your face and people know who you are. And they're excited to talk to you. And I think you've done a very good job creating a brand, right? And I think there's a lot of layers to it. So I want to get your thoughts on this and I'll give you my read, but I'm curious if this was intentional, how you thought about it and how you went about it, because I think it can apply to a lot of different areas. So when you think about the brand, I think it seems like an intentional strategy, right? You were anonymous. You created kind of a cartoon character face, which became the brand. And then you had, so that's one aspect of it. And then you had your voice, right? And your voice was a part of the brand. And then you revealed, which was another part, I think, of the brand building that you did, at least from my perception, kind of outside looking in. And now you have your actual face, right? Your persona, that people can see you and know who you are. So there's these layers to this. And to me, you've built a very strong brand and something that, CDG, people know that brand. People know what you are, know what you deliver, and they respect you. So I'm curious how you went about that process, if you thought through it intentionally, if some of the things happened, some of them you thought through intentionally, what that was like.
No, the business building has been very intentional, and with lots of thought and lots of strategy that went into it. And I can give you just several examples.
Yeah.
First of all, starting at a very high level from actual content, I sort of went through this shift over about 6 to 9 months where I realized a couple of things. I realized that my, asymmetrical value was in my ability to deliver industry insights, right? Things where you have to have experience, having been in auto retailing to really understand and see. Secondly, what I realized was that there were so many people out there trying to be these consumer advocates to the detriment of dealers. And I didn't believe that made any sense. Like
Right.
my through line through my professional career has really been around transparency. If you look at every business I've done, the mission has always been the same. It's been bring transparency to the car business. That's the mission at Car Dealership Guide. That's the mission at Get a Car. That was the mission before that. And so I sort of came with a different perspective. I said, what can I do here to build a good business, deliver very strong value, and do something that I actually enjoy? And what do I actually enjoy? Well, I do enjoy the industry and kind of, what's happening on an economic level, market and all that. And so I realized that in order to hit that trifecta, to also build a great business, also enjoy what I'm doing, also deliver really strong value, that I wanted to hone in on the industry. And so I went through this transition process where I said, okay, I wedged into the market via the consumer. I did. There's no doubting that. Like I scaled by being very consumer oriented and delivering insights that, frankly, were not necessarily helpful with the dealers to run a better business. They were interesting to dealers though, right? But that's how I wedged into the market. And then at scale, I said, okay, I've built a name for myself, right? We're big enough. I sort of took this slow process over about 9 months where I just went more niche, right? There was a awkward transition period where I would define every word on the podcast. I'd be like, oh, GPU is gross profit per unit. And I sort of did away with that over time because I said look, let me give a transition. I know I'm going to lose most of my consumer listeners, but I don't really care. I said, I know that at the end of the day, I don't want to be, something small for many, many listeners. I want to be the best for, a more niche cohort of listeners. And that niche is the auto industry. It's still a massive niche. We still have, an audience of just, thousands and tens of thousands, but specifically within automotive, right? I wanted to own that domain when it came to content creation. So we doubled down on that. I'll tell you another couple of quick things though. It also came down to monetization, right? I'm a business. We invest in our content well over $1 million a year. It's even a lot more than that now. And one of the things early on that I said was this, okay, how are we going to fund this business? How are we going to monetize? And we had several options, right? We could have just, do ad deals with anyone. We could kind of separate it. We could do subscriptions, blah, blah, blah. But I knew a couple of things. I knew number one, that I want to democratize content, meaning I just want to have content that anyone can consume. I don't want to be a gatekeeper because guess what? If you're a smaller dealer that maybe you want to grow, maybe you don't have the budget to pay for content or whatever. I just didn't believe in that. That's just not part of my, ethos. I said, we're not going to charge for content. And I instantly cut that out because early on we did charge for some content. I stopped doing that. I refunded everyone. I canceled subscriptions. Done. The second thing we said was, how are we going to work with advertisers? And one of the ground rules that I made early on was that we will not take money from any OEMs or any, not play ball with anyone on tier one. And the reason we did that was because if you think about my brand, I'm very focused on the economy, in the big picture, right? The car market. How can I, if XYZ OEM is paying me lots of money per year, can I really go out there and be honest about, the blue sky valuations of their dealership and how, it's failing? I can, but it makes it a lot tougher. And then there's expectations. And I just didn't want to be in that turf. Like that's the turf I wanted to play in. That's the sandbox I wanted to be in. And I said, that's just where we're going to draw the line. And so we always refuse to, do deals. And again, I think the beauty of this, the type of business we've built is that we do have very separated news and content divisions. So like our news arm does their thing. Content is, we do our thing. And, there's like there's separation, which helps us run a good business, but still it's these really simple but important early strategic decisions that create that brand. And so you asked me, how did I build a brand? Well, it's a lot of small things, but trust. It ultimately came down to trust. Can people trust us? And why should people trust us? And all these little things added up to what we are today.
No, it's awesome. That's awesome. That's great stuff. And honestly, just hearing you talk about separation of news and content, I mean, it's very similar to what you see in traditional media too, right? You separate editorial from content or advertising or whatever. Those are two separate teams, right? There's a firewall there, and that's very, very intentional. So did you have any experience in that traditional media world at all prior? I mean, because obviously you grew up, I think, in kind of a dealership, an independent dealership, and then you started your business, Get a Car. So no traditional media experience at all.
No traditional media experience, just asking lots of questions, and being a sponge and just trying things, seeing them fail, right? Picking up on buzzwords, just trying to, from people. Like it was a lot of learning. We messed it up early on. It was a little tougher where we didn't have separated divisions, and when we realized we got to separate them. And the beauty of it is that you can separate them, and you can still provide preference to your brand partner. So I'll give you an example. If we need a stat on inventory supply, and we know that one of our brand partners offers that stat, right? We will default to asking them to get us that stat. So it's a nice thing where things are separated. You run a good, clean business, but your brand partners still know that you value them. And they know that if there's a commoditized objective stat that they happen to have access to, you're going to go to them first, right? And so there's little stuff like that you can do, which is nice. But net, it helps just create, build a trusted business, and just it's a cleaner ship that way.
Yeah. So content-wise, you've obviously built out. I consume most of your content via audio, right? But you also have newsletter. You have a lot of channels that you leverage. I'd love to get your perspective on, podcast as a channel, and then really, is this a channel that dealers, retailers can use too? And just kind of as we're talking here, I started to think about a dealer up kind of Toledo, Ohio area. His name's Steve Taylor. I don't know if you're familiar with him. But years ago, he wrote a book called Tailor Made, and he really kind of, in a lot of ways, guided consumers through how to buy a vehicle, right? And, obviously didn't give away trade secrets and that kind of stuff, but he was very transparent. And his whole premise was, if I can help people understand the right questions to ask and be transparent with them, why wouldn't they come to me? And he's been very successful. He's done a great job. So just listening to the way that you're thinking about creating content, it brought me to that concept. And I wonder, do you think there's an opportunity for dealers to leverage this medium as well, to be educational, to connect with consumers, to niche down to their kind of local market?
I don't. And I'll tell you why. So I think that there's too much emphasis right now with people in long form. Long form is an extremely tough medium to crack, right? To get someone to dedicate 30 to 60 minutes of their time, let alone get them to do it consistently, you have to provide exceptional value. If you are not providing some form of truly educational value, that's going to be, pertinent in their life for, every day, every week for a long period of time, you're going to have a very tough time to retain that listener. So let's kind of break that down for a second. If I'm a dealer, I'm investing, and by the way, I'm putting my money where my mouth is here, and I'll explain to you in a second, but where I'm investing my time and resources is in short form, because not only is long form tougher to scale because distribution and network effects aren't just it's much or not as strong as they are with short form, where you have these like massive social networks, but you have people's attention spans are super short. People don't have time, and if I'm a dealer trying to sell a car, introduce you to my dealership, bring you to my service department, I'm going short form. And again, this is tried and true. There's plenty of great creators out there that I'm sure you know of who are crushing it on short form, targeting consumers all over the country. They're doing great. Long form, the reason car dealership guide long form works is because, number one, I started this podcast when I already had 400,000 followers, of which a subsect of those were industry followers who were very close followers to the brand and very loyal and listened and were instantly tuning in to anything I created. That's the first thing. The second thing is, what we do is sort of like continuing education for dealers. And so there is a very good reason, right? When a dealer, like our vision, we like to say, is to be in every dealer's pocket, right? Because I don't care if you listen to me, you read me, you watch me, whatever it is, we want to be in your pocket in some way. Whether you read the newsletter, you listen to the podcast, we just want to be there at least, one time a day, just, provide some value. And so dealers come to us, and the reason they spend time listening to us or consuming our content is because it's educational. And so it's a very big difference, right? Now, if you look at the bar for consumer content, in every single vertical, whether it be health, just sports, whatever it is. I mean, when you're just creating long form content that is not in B2B, business to business, or very educational on a specific vertical, you're competing with the best of the best in the world, right? You're competing with Netflix. You're competing with these, heavy hitters or whoever that are investing millions upon billions, into their content. Who knows how much you're investing? Right. It's a really tough turf to play in. And so I would just say, my personal take is, and I mentioned, we just invested in a company that helps dealers create short form, called Nomad Content Studio. And they literally come to you, and they just help you do that. And it's because I believe in it. I believe that that's what's working for dealers and what's best. Now, and I'll tell you, it doesn't mean that's, someone here and there will create a podcast that will take off with dealers. I'm sure they will, but it's just the likelihood of success is extremely low. And at the end of the day, you're trying to build brand awareness. You're trying to sell cars. You're trying to bring service, right? What's the surest way to get there as quickly and efficiently as possible and build durable, lasting value? And I think that short form is that way.
So define, for anybody listening who's not in the content creation business, how do you define short form content? And maybe just like 2 examples.
Just like under 2 minutes or under 60 seconds, Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, right? So again, there's so many dealers out there now that are doing this well. You see these salespeople, all over. George Saliba is a good friend. He does a phenomenal job at actually documenting what he does in store. Others like Russ Flips Whips do skits. There's Ben's and Bow Ties, Doug Horner, he does also skits. I mean, there's so many examples, but I think they do short form very, very well.
Yeah, no, those are good. Those are good examples for sure. And it's also easier to promote those, right? And pay to get them in front of eyeballs. It's just easier. It really is. And I think your point earlier was a really good one, where you had built this massive audience before putting long form content in front of them. So you had a trust already built in with those people, where they would invest 30 minutes, they would invest 60 minutes because they trusted you because of everything that you'd done up to that point, right? You had almost proven the value. It doesn't get much shorter form than a tweet, right? It just doesn't. So
tweets are very viral. very it's a great way to just scale an audience early on if you're good at copywriting and you actually have something interesting to share that's unique. And then, my thing was when I realized that I want to turn this into a company, I said, I want to take my rented audience, rented meaning I'm on a platform. I can get deplatformed tomorrow and I won't have my audience. I want to take my rented audience and I want to convert it into an owned audience. And so the next step was, okay, what type of content can I deliver on a podcast, in a newsletter? How can I get your email address and how can I get you to listen to me on audio so that I don't lose you and I can, we can maintain a relationship on any platform. And guess what? That worked out well because some platforms have come up, some have come down. These things change all the time. You can't be dependent on a platform. And that's evergreen advice for any person out there that's, has any business, frankly. You cannot be dependent on one platform. And, today, if I got deplatformed from any platform, it would suck, but I'm not dependent on any one platform. I have 90,000 email addresses that receive our newsletters. We don't send out any spam. We don't do any of that. Like we literally just, you sign up for it, you just get what you sign up for. We don't even send out like ads, like other, traditional outlets will send you like random advertising. We don't do any of that.
Right.
I just, you know what I mean? If we want to send you a message, we'll put a little intro blurb at the top of our emails. But the point is, we know we have an owned audience. We have that trust that you mentioned, and we really try to stick to that. Of course, the podcast is, people subscribe to it so they get, new podcasts delivered to them directly. It's really, it's just a game of repetition. It's just a game of repetition and consistency. That's what makes media well. It's not who can create a great episode. It's can you do it? Like when you told me you're on episode or 100 and I forget exactly what number you mentioned.
Yeah,
I was impressed. Yeah, because I'm also on like 160 something. Actually, we're right in neck and neck. But nice. Most people don't get past like episode 20. I think like 95% or 99% of podcasts don't even get past episode 20. So to have consistency, that's the, what differentiates you in this business.
Yeah, no, that's great. And honestly, I would say that consistency can differentiate you in a lot of things that you do in life, right? It's not just, yes, immediate matters and having that consistency matters. But once you have something that you decide you're going to do and it's working, keep doing it. Whatever that thing is, keep going, because if it's working, then keep pushing. And that leads me actually to a question I'm curious. You've been doing this for a while. Are you tired yet? Are you like, do you ever kind of wake up and it's like, oh man, okay. Are you still excited about doing this every day? I guess is the question.
That's a good one. So some days yes, some days no. But I'll tell you what, I have been very forgiving to myself. So, early on I said, how am I going to do this? And I just kept building and I kept taking on more and more and more. And I realized over time that for this business to, last for 20, 30, 40 years and beyond, I need to make sure that I wake up in the morning excited. Now, look, not every day is wonderful. Some days suck. And some guests are amazing. Some guests are, not as interesting. You don't always hit it. But my method has been very simple. I said, whatever doesn't give me energy and doesn't help me create good content, I have to find a way to, complement myself with someone who can do that well. And so I'll give you an example. Like we brought on another host of the podcast, Sam, who's been complimenting me, and he's been helping with doing like the daily content. So we launch short form content, bites, just daily short form content in audio format. And why do we do that? Because dealers asked us, hey, love your 45-minute podcast, but sometimes I just want a quick daily update of news and stuff like that. Can you do that? And we said, yeah, we can. So we launched this like daily 5-minute content after we listened to our audience, but I didn't have time to do that. I didn't want to do that. And I needed to find someone that can help me. So Sam came in, he's been doing a great job at it. He's been doing it daily consistently and he loves it. And so I think the short answer is whenever I find something is draining my energy, I ask myself, why is this happening? And then how can I solve for it? And you'd be surprised. People think that, it's a business centered around you. There's key man risk. The truth is there isn't, right? The value I bring to the table, of course, is my personal podcast that I do, the CDG podcast, where I'm the host, of course, and my insights, right? And my insights, I can extract those on paper and, very frequently. The point being that there's ways to scale this business and, it kind of trumps conventional thinking. No different than when I was a small dealer and people told me, oh, you'll never be able to scale your used car acquisition department because, other people will spend your money like it's, whatever. And, people just give you all this really bad advice. You just have to kind of think from first principles and say, wait, okay, why can't I scale the business? Right. Well, let's break it down. Here's what I'm doing today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great. Out of the 7 tweets I do in a day, maybe 4 of them are objective commoditized information that I don't need to be tweeting. And then the other 3 are my personal opinion, which I will keep on tweeting. So there's ways to complement yourself and kind of, reduce your load while still delivering the same quality of content, the same, quantity of content, and having a lot more fun doing it, which creates a better business and more staying power.
No, that's great. So it's funny coming into this conversation. I was actually going to ask you, because obviously you have a dealership background, you had Get a Car, you're still in this world, you're creating content. And I was going to ask you, if the opportunity arose, would you want to buy a franchise? But you're saying 20, 30, 40 years creating content. So I'm guessing that's kind of, you never want to say never, but it seems like you're pretty excited about what you're doing now.
So, what I'm actually most excited about is the doors that Car Dealership Guy has opened. And, we've gotten a lot of investment opportunities. We've made 2 big investments, and we acquired CDG Recruiting. Well, we rebranded it to CDG Recruiting, which is our recruiting company now, where we help dealers find top-notch talent and industry vendors and auto tech. That's been a phenomenal success. Did that acquisition about 6 months ago.
That's a really smart tie-in.
And recently, like I mentioned, we just did now Nomad Content Studio, which we're helping dealers really build up their social presence, full service, from the filming to the editing to the posting, clipping, everything. Again, both businesses that I'd never plan on, being involved in. Notice that there's an opportunity in the market. And of course, I have the audience for CDG Recruiting. We have an audience of, so many people out there and talent that's looking for a new home, or employers that are looking for to find the right talent. And for the same thing for the content studio. And so I'd say one of the parts I'm most excited about with this business is my access to these incredible people doing amazing things in the industry and being able to participate, via an investment or an acquisition. And that's no different for potential stakes in, franchises and dealerships. And I'll tell you, we haven't done one yet. But we have taken a look at some, and we are always taking a look at them. So I think that I'm going to find my way back into, auto retail by way of investment at this point. But I'm happy about that because I get to keep doing what I'm doing, and I get to still kind of, be involved that way. So that's kind of how I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So while I got you, I got to ask, give me, a couple bullets next 12, 18 months. What do you think is front and center and dealers really need to pay attention to? You get, you have a lot of your own insights. You get to get so much input from so many different people inside of the industry. What are kind of the 1, 2 things that you think really need to be a primary focus and or things to look out for that maybe people don't see coming in the next year or so?
It's so tricky because the volatility is only been increasing.
You're
tariffs.
Right. Yeah.
One day we have more tariffs. One day we have fewer tariffs. It's like every day, and that's just one piece of the puzzle. Look, I think the one that should be obvious, or is regardless, there's a lot of kind of, some people say hype, some not, but like AI is real, and just if I could encourage everyone here to just open ChatGPT right now and subscribe to the $200 a month option and try their operator feature, which is literally a robot that does stuff for you online. Like I just subscribed to this weekend, and I just was playing with it just to see. I was like, all right, book me a vacation in Florida, whatever. And you tell it your specs, and you literally see this thing go on Expedia, do the search. You see the cursor moving. It's a robot. I mean, it's like unbelievable. The point I'm trying to make is imagine the possibilities, right? Imagine doing that with, many, many, many different things at your dealership. And I know, a lot of this stuff is already being integrated into the, DMSs and the platforms like you guys are doing, and,
sure,
other players in the industry are doing. But the point is, it's so real. And, I think just paying close attention to what's available out there is number one. I think is, from a tech perspective, I think is more important than ever, because just like, people that were late adopters to websites and all these things, I mean, you're just going to fall behind. So that's the first thing. That's more technological perspective. I will tell you that I've never seen, more than ever, I'm seeing dealers just diversify into other revenue streams in automotive. So I'm seeing lots of, investments in like power sports, just like rental car companies, collision centers, car washes.
Yep.
Dealers are diversifying. And the reason they're diversifying is because, again, while the prospects of the industry are positive and, I'm not coming from like a doom and gloom perspective, but there is a lot of volatility. And, will service sustain its all-time highs into the next 4 or 5 years? Well, I don't know. We've undersold lots of cars. We know that we leased so many fewer cars over the last couple of years, right? We've underproduced. And so that's going to reflect in service as these 3, 4, 5 year cars, or as these vehicles that we have even leased recently, are no longer under manufacturer's warranty and stuff like that, right? People are much less inclined to go to the dealer. There's a lot of things to kind of, consider there. But the point is, whether new cars, used cars, it's just really hard to predict what is going to be, kind of the hot ticket in any given year. And so I'm seeing more than ever a lot of emphasis on diversification. I mean, today you look at at a top Toyota dealer, they have, like a 2001 Toyota Corolla on their front line or something. Like if you look back 10 years ago, they weren't selling this type of inventory. So people are digging deeper into the well. They're being more efficient. They know that, they have to kind of turn over every stone and find where the efficiencies lie in their businesses. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's, creates better habits. It's good that we're not into craziness with inflation anymore like we were a couple of years back, because frankly, that wasn't the real car business. Things were too easy. And I think I'm very optimistic. I think that, the industry's on a good trajectory. I think that all the direct to consumer threats and entrants, and, kind of external pressure is going to continue forcing the industry to become better. Sometimes you need that forcing function to kind of help you improve. No different from what the FTC has done, regardless of the fact that it's, sorry if you hear yelling upstairs, regardless if you hear, for the fact of, the FTC cars rule has been vacated, I do still think it's important that, I do think it's actually helpful for the industry to continue to push for more transparency. And so, like I said, net, I think times are going to be good, but it's important to just continue diversifying and trying to understand, am I too reliant on one brand or on one, profit center, whereas I should be on more. And I mentioned brand. We didn't talk about that, but I do think that, I don't think all brands will make it. We've already seen some potential consolidation amongst brands. And so
there's at least interest.
There's at least, a potential interest. They kind of called it off or whatever. But the point is, you see things are changing, and dealers are realizing that.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I love that. All right, well, Yossi, I could probably talk to you for hours or days if we had the time, but I want to be respectful of your time, obviously. So, anything else? Anything we haven't touched on that you want to? Anything I didn't ask you that I should?
To be honest with you, I can't think of anything specific. I'm just glad we got to do this. Number one, I appreciate the invite. If we can be helpful to anyone, or if anyone listening is like, I have feedback, we love feedback. I don't just say it, I mean it. That's the only way we create new content. We offer, bring out new media properties. So that's always really helpful. And so let's go with that one, right? What feedback do you have for us, Greg? What can we do? What can we be doing better? There has to be something you can think of.
No, I mean, from my perspective, stay consistent. I love that you're getting into the short version and diversifying your media. You talked about diversification for dealers, I think, in your business too. Continuing to look for new ways to distribute, look for new channels, look for new mediums. The beautiful thing about media is you can try it, and if it doesn't work, you don't have to keep doing it. Right? Like it's not, there's usually not this massive investment. You can try it, you throw it out there, either it lands or it doesn't. And if it lands, you keep going. If it doesn't, then you back off of it. So it seems like you've been doing that and continue to do that. I think you have, you've landed more wins than losses, it seems like. So I'd say keep pushing and find some of those losses so you're really stretching yourself as far as you can. There's my feedback.
That's a good one. So, what's funny? Like we have had a bunch of L's along the way. I don't think people realize them because we hyper iterate, like we really iterate so quickly. And so we don't dwell on things that don't work. We just, okay, it did not work. Why? let's understand, let's talk to, our readers or listeners, and either we change it or we cut it. So that's been pretty refreshing, just to be able to, like you said, try new things very quickly and see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. No, it's great stuff. It's great stuff. All right. Well, Yossi, I'm going to let you go. I know you probably got a million other things to do. You're a busy guy, but I really do appreciate you hopping on. It's been a fun conversation. Hopefully we can do it again sometime soon.
Greg, appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Yossi Levi as much as I did. Great stories there. He's a guy that has been in this industry for a long time and just, over the last couple of years has really grown what he's doing with Car Dealership Guy. Love the insights he brings to the industry and the transparency as well. So if you don't know who he is or you don't follow him, make sure to check him out on all of his social channels. Subscribe to his newsletter, as he was talking about. But before we hop off, don't forget, you can watch or listen to all episodes of Connected on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify podcasts. And make sure to hit subscribe so you're notified every other week when new episodes are released. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.